And we're live, everybody. Welcome in. It is Thursday, November 2nd, 1 p.m. Central. Two really big news items I want to go through with you today. So sit back, enjoy, and let's get started right away. Let's waste no time. All right. So here's a post from Elon Musk on X. Excited to announce that SpaceX Starlink has achieved break-even cash flow. Excellent work by a great team. Starlink is also now a majority of all active satellites and will have launched a majority of all satellites cumulatively from Earth by next year. Now, this is a really, really big deal. This is a quest that SpaceX has been on for a really long time to enable the company to essentially get itself to Mars. It's been working on reusable rockets. It's been working on sending satellites to space. And this threshold is one of the most important for the company to ensure its long-term survival. And it's reached this point through a lot of dominance really in the industry. Tesla's a company that we cover quite often on this channel, and SpaceX, it's kind of like a Tesla of aerospace engineering or aerospace industry, but like times 10. And to really highlight how big of a gap they have, I asked my ex-followers, what's your favorite chart out there that explains SpaceX's dominance? And so here's one from Timmy that he posted. Here you can see how much mass SpaceX has sent to space versus its competition. This is SpaceX, and here is everybody else. China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation, a whole country, is in second place, and a private corporation in the United States in SpaceX is number one by a very long shot. And then here you also have a chart from another user on X. This is from Gonzalo, who owns the most satellites that's going around Earth. SpaceX on their own, this is as of 1 or 2 years ago, they have about half of the satellites in space, totaling about 3,400 as of the time of this graph. But it's actually significantly more. It's about 5,000 now in 2023. But it really just shows how dominant they are in the space industry. Now, in case you're not familiar, I think a lot of you probably are, but in case you're new, I have a lot of new folks coming to my channel, so thank you so much. SpaceX is able to do this by reusing rockets. So this is something they've been doing for a really long time. Essentially, they send a rocket in space and they bring it back, and that enables two things. It enables them to send a lot more stuff to space a lot more quickly than everybody else, and it also allows them to dramatically bring down the cost of space, because now you're not using a rocket and then sending it into the ocean and then have to build a new one. You can use the same one over and over again. Now, I want to read a post from a good friend of the show, Dave Lee. He has a phenomenal YouTube channel. If you don't follow him on YouTube, make sure you go check him out. If you don't follow him on X, make sure you go find him at HeyDave7. Just to kind of encapsulate his thoughts here. Break-even cash flow for SpaceX is a big deal. For the first time going forward, SpaceX does not need to rely on raising capital to fund operations or expenses. And Starlink now has over 5,000 satellites, making up the majority of all satellites in space, which is the number we just talked about. Starlink also has over 2 million customers worldwide. This recurring subscription revenue is providing the revenue that brings SpaceX to break-even cash flow. Now, to do some very rough math on what 2 million customers actually means for SpaceX and Starlink. So I went to Starlink's website and I looked up. There are 4 different plans that they have for Starlink customers. They have a standard, priority, mobile, and mobile priority. And their cheapest one, the standard, is about $120 a month. And that 2 million figure is everybody. But if we just do some very simple math and say, okay, just assume everyone's paying that $120 a month, right? And you plug it into a spreadsheet, Starlink is generating about $240 million per month of revenue at a minimum, most likely. If you just assume 2 million customers and each of them paying $120 per month, it will probably be more on average because they have a lot of commercial customers as well. That brings a yearly revenue. So if you times that by 12, it brings their yearly revenue to almost $3 billion per year. And so that's money now that Starlink has in the bank that's going to SpaceX as well, that's allowing SpaceX to reach the level that they have right now. And if you compare SpaceX and Starlink to their competition, this is, again, kind of similar to the Tesla story somewhat. this is some news that broke earlier this month, or rather like 3 days ago. Boeing, which is one of the biggest providers of space industry stuff, rockets and whatnot, they halt the plan for Starlink's competitor, and they've given up the license to operate in low Earth orbit, probably because it's difficult. It's very hard. I mean, they call it rocket science for a reason. What's interesting is Elon Musk replied to this post and said competing with SpaceX is tough. And then almost on a similar wavelength, let's say, there was a post that Elon Musk had about 3 years ago, September 28th, 2020, where he said that Starlink will probably IPO, but only several years into the future when revenue growth is smooth and predictable. Public market does not like erratic cash flow. Haha. I'm a huge fan of small retail investors. Will make sure they get top priority. You can hold me to it. And again, this was September 28th of 2020. So it's going to be interesting to see if SpaceX has now reached that sort of predictable cash flow, predictable revenue growth for that part of the business to IPO. And for those that are not familiar, IPO stands for initial public offering, which is basically when a stock becomes available for the public to purchase, just like you can purchase, say, Tesla stock or Microsoft or Apple or Walmart, whatever those companies are that are public. So it's going to be very interesting to track if this comes to fruition. Some people are saying most likely sometime in 2024, maybe 2025, but we'll see. We'll see if SpaceX and Starlink have reached that time. All right. And then for the second topic, this one's just mind-blowing. Let's go ahead and get started on this one. So Jim Cramer, I don't think he's a friend of the show. He blocked me on X a while ago. Probably because I said something not appropriate, but it's okay. There were some comments from him that were made today regarding the Tesla Cybertruck. And I want you to pay close attention to how he's reading what he's saying and what he's saying. Let's go ahead and play. Do make sure you can hear this in the comment section. And then let's go ahead and see what Jimmy Cramer has to say.
Phil, let me posit something to you. You know, there was a lot of people. There was a twin blow against Ford. There was obviously the union. People didn't like the quarter. But then there was also this Tesla, this Cybertruck. $100,000 for a Cybertruck. That I have a Maverick, okay? Apparently this does not have the payload of a Maverick, which fits in a small parking spot on any urban street in this country. I checked, and the durability of the metal is not there. I wonder whether this man can sell even 50,000 of the 200,000 Cybertrucks, and this may be Ford's era after all of the Sturm and Drang about Sean Fain and how he took it to farming.
I will say with this regard to the Cybertruck, and we should see the first ones delivered at the end of this month. At least that's the plan from Tesla at this point. It's going to be a slow ramp up in production. They're not even going to get up to where they would consider full production until well into 2025. And I also think you should keep this in mind, given the price point, given the design, given the capability of the vehicle and what it's designed for. It's going for the urban market, particularly those urban markets that are into electric vehicles. Southern California, Oregon, Washington, the coasts. You're not going to see the Cybertruck in big numbers in Kansas City, St. Louis. I mean, it's just not going to sell there. Will there be some? Yes, eventually there will be some. But I do not look at this as one, Sarah, that a vehicle that people are going to say, well, I'm not driving the Chevy Silverado or F-150 anymore. I'm driving the Cybertruck. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, as a threat there. And in the meantime, it faces enormous challenges, according to Elon Musk, in getting off the production line. Yeah. Phil, thank you.
Interesting stuff, huh? All right, let's tackle a few of the comments that were made on this. First, I really want to highlight this post. This is from Jeff Lutz. Very smart guy. Do make sure you follow him on X. Form 4 written talking points when he's looking down to read. Interesting, right? He's just looking down, reading stuff. I don't know. He's probably right, but let's go ahead and attack some of the things that Jim was saying here. And by attack, I mean let's see if they're right. All right. So toughness of the metal of the Cybertruck. We had this thing happen on the Joe Rogan podcast where Joe Rogan tried shooting a 80-pound arrow into the Cybertruck. It bounced off. It left a little bit of a dent. Judge for yourself. This video from a while ago or a few days ago that is loud of a Cybertruck being shot up by a Tommy gun 50 cal, 45 cal bullets. I don't know. Does that seem I don't want to make any assumptions. Maybe Jim's right, okay? Let's talk about the price. $100,000 was the number that was thrown out there. This is probably originating from a rumor that was on Facebook where there was an anonymous person that said that they had a reservation that came through where the company was quoting them 100,000, 98.9 plus 7,000 plus TTL. So I'm assuming that's where that rumor's coming from, and it's fascinating to see CNBC comment on rumors the way they are. Maybe they're not. Maybe they have some intelligence that we don't. They are, after all, a huge corporation. They have so many resources, and they're just so accurate with their reporting, right? Then let's look at one of Cyberstruck's main competitors, which is going to be the F-150 Lightning. This is where I think the $100,000 figure is probably incorrect. You have the F-150 Lightning lineup here. The Pro starts at $49,900, XLT at $54,900. But then even if you add the extended range battery to those pickup trucks, you go up to $69,900. The Lariat, whatever you want to call it, it's up to $77,500 with the extended range battery. And you got a Platinum at top of the line F-150 that starts at $92,000. Now, the reason why I think $100,000 is probably incorrect for this truck is because if we look at some of the existing data for Tesla's vehicles, let me go ahead fix this so we can see this. This is a chart that I showed a bunch of times on this channel. Here's every single Tesla SUV, or every single EV SUV that's out there in the market in the United States. The dots in red are Teslas. Here's how expensive they are. 100,000 down to 20,000 down here, which don't exist any of them don't exist. So here's 40,000. You can see that Tesla is consistently some of the cheapest vehicles you can buy for each one of the segments that they're in at the different price points, with some of the best mileage you can also get for those cars. And so it stands to reason, I would think, that the Cybertruck is going to follow a similar trend once it's launched. I'm not saying that it won't be 100,000 at some trims, but it could be. It could be much more affordable than people think. When I say that, I mean closer to maybe $70,000, especially if you include the EV tax credit. But let's just forget and say, okay, even if the price is $100,000, will it be able to sell what it needs to sell over the long term? And I think one of the clear trends that Tesla is on, that seems like they're on, is that they're dramatically reducing price. So even if they start at 100,000, I'm quite confident they'll have a electric pickup truck that's going to be sold somewhere around the $60,000 to $70,000 long term, maybe even cheaper than that, and maybe even sooner than that. So the 100,000 figure, I don't think is going to happen, but who knows? I could be wrong. Let's next talk about the payload. So one of the things that Jim Cramer said is that, hey, it looks like, when he's reading, it looks like Tesla Cybertruck's going to have less payload than my Maverick, and the Maverick has 1,500 pound payload or so. So somebody's telling him, or he thinks that it's going to be less than 1,500. And what I'm guessing is happening here, is just my guess, is that they're taking the gross vehicle weight ratings that were released for the Cybertruck not too long ago, and then there's two different classes that the Cybertruck's going to fit in, which is going to be either Class G, which is going to be between 8,000 to 9,000 gross vehicle weight, which includes all the weight plus the payload on the truck, not including the trailer. So that's one of the categories, and the other one is 9,000 to 10,000 pounds. My guess is what happened here, either Jim or whatever he was reading, is that on the Joe Rogan podcast, Elon said that it was going to be around 7,000 pounds, likely at max configuration, meaning the biggest battery, the most motors you can have on the truck, around 7,000. And my guess is somebody took this lower number, this 8,000 number, and they're like, hey, it's probably 1,000 payload. So yeah, it's probably not going to have that much payload. But I find that really, really hard to believe, mainly because if you look at, again, Tesla's main competitor, which is going to be the F-150 Lightning, if you look at the two maximum payload figures from the F-150 Lightning, it's 2235 and 1952 for the extended range. So these are around 2,000 pounds at a minimum. And back when Tesla had their unveil back in November of 2019, the number they stated for all of us was 3,500. It's probably going to be closer to, say, 3,000. Because I think what's happening here, if my educated guess, is that this Class G of 8,000 to 9,000 pounds probably applies to the smaller battery, which is going to be a lighter vehicle. So the difference between the gross vehicle weight rating and the weight of the truck is going to be somewhere around 2,000 to 3,000 pounds. And then as you add more batteries, I think the GVWR is going to go up to account for that ability to carry payload on the truck. So, but I could be wrong. Listen, it could have less payload than a F-150 Lightning, even though the bed is half a foot longer. I could be wrong. Listen, what crazier things have happened, okay? I don't know a lot of things. Then, as far as the trend, as far as the commentary that was made around, hey, I think this is going to be a coastal product. I don't think a lot of people in the interior of the United States are going to want this truck, so on and so forth. So I did just a quick Google trend search on the Tesla Model Y for the past day, and I looked at how the car was trending as far as searches go on Google. This is for the Model Y. You can see very clearly, and the darker spots in the country are the ones where most of the interest is coming from for that car. So Tesla Model Y is very obviously dominated here by the West Coast, California, Nevada, Washington, New Jersey. You also got some Vermont, New York, so on, Florida, Texas, Georgia. And you got some Colorado in there, probably because they have a lot of very lucrative EV tax credits in that state. But if we do the same thing for Cybertruck, and I'm curious to see if you'll see the same thing, the spread seems a lot more even, right? So let's check the colors here. So look at the Model Y, then look at the Cybertruck. Model Y, Cybertruck. To me, it looks like this middle of the country here that's sort of pretty light, which indicates not a lot of interest, right? And the Cybertruck's quite a bit darker, to the point where South Dakota is actually the most interested on the Cybertruck based on the last 24 hours of searches, next by Vermont, and then Nevada. So to me, it looks like there might be a little bit of I think it's not correct to say that the Cybertruck's going to be strictly a coastal product. I think there's going to be interest for the truck across the entire country, but it's going to be tough to see until we get there, right? Until the truck launches rather, and then the pricing is released for that vehicle. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Let me end with this. I found this pretty funny. There's this thing called the Jim Cramer in what is it called? Elon called it here the inverse Cramer. The inverse Cramer, which basically means that anything Jim says turns out to be reality, but the opposite. All right. So let's go ahead and listen to this. This is back from, I believe, 2010, 2011, when Tesla first IPO'd, when Tesla first came out with their stock. Let's go ahead and take a listen what and CNBC and Elon Musk were saying.
You know what? I'm not sure that this is a smart investment. Our own Jim Cramer yesterday said, I'm not sure that Tesla has a business plan that's going to work. It's not a smart investment. What do you say to the skeptics who look at where Tesla is, the money that you're raising, and they say, you know what? They've got a nice roadster, but they don't have a good business plan.
Well, I think, Jim, I'd say, yeah, sure, Jim, we're no Bear Stearns, but I think we're going to do okay. Jim, I think, recommended Bear Stearns and Lehman and other things. So, frankly, he's a contraindicator.
You know what?
And of course, Bear Stearns and those banks are the banks that went under during the financial crisis of 2008. So, and maybe that explains why the stock is up almost 6%. Who knows? We'll see. Anyway, let me leave it there. Thank you so much for joining. We'll do an extended Q&A session tomorrow on Fridays. I'll try to do that moving forward as well. But thank you for